So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a plastics engineer. I'm the Director of Engineering and Innovation for APC Packaging. Tell you a little bit more about myself. I've been in the plastics industry for 27 years. I've been involved in several sides of the plastics industry, from automotive, military, medical, and now for the last 8 or 9 years, packaging. Over the years, I've experienced the ebbs and tides of a green movement throughout my career. And this time, it definitely feels different. Due to this, and I feel it is the right thing to do as well, it becomes a necessity that sustainable design be incorporated as part of our design culture. Our goal is to help educate people and brands so they can achieve either their first attempt at a more sustainable package or expand their portfolio of sustainable options. So today we're going to talk about designing for sustainability. Sustainable design, no matter which side of the debate surrounding recycling, climate change, or being a good steward of our home, I believe is accepted by all. First, is sustainable design different than just good design? Yes and no would be my answer. You cannot add sustainable design to your repertoire unless you already have the basics of good design under your belt. So why is it some seem more successful or hit more pain points than others when new product designs are commercialized that are professed to be sustainable? I believe it's due to our company culture, thought process, and execution. A sustainable education, defining innovation, and applying design intent, I believe, are crucial points that must be addressed. These three main points will help you attain sustainable design concepts that include, but are not limited to, incorporating recycled material, designing for disassembly, recyclability, reuse or refill, material weight reductions, multifunctionalism, optimizing waste management, energy efficiency, transportation reductions are just some that are on the list. This brings to the forefront the question, how do we do the work? How do we go about the work? And the underlying purpose that are all necessary for a successful, sustainable design. One other slightly intangible aspect we need to be aware of as well is what is the intended consumer's relationship, not only with your potential design, but their relationship and perception of sustainability. Depending on the region your design will be released into, it can have an effect on the consumer's perception of the design, how it works, and their perception if your design is actually sustainable. Without education, a purpose, and palpable intent, luck will be the only thing we can hope for in the end. So how do we go about attaining as many of these points as possible? Sustainable education. Before we can even get into design aspects, it is necessary to discuss sustainable education that is required. Being well versed in how sustainability will affect incorporating recycled material, as I mentioned before, designing for disassembly, recyclability, reuse and refill, and so on. These are just some of the tools needed in your sustainable design tool belt. A sustainable education will make you well versed in the needs and requirements your clients or employer require from you before even starting a new design. Sustainability is not only determined by which material you choose, but a host of other criteria, local regulation, source of the material, etc. It is a habit of mine to look up the definition of the word or words to ensure myself of the direction. How many times have we thought we knew something and come to find out we misunderstood completely due to a single word or phrase? Here's Webster's definition of the word sustainability. Capable of being sustained, relating to or being a method of harvesting or using a resource so that the resource is not depleted or permanently damaged, relating to a lifestyle involving the use of sustainable methods. Sustainability seems like it would not be that hard to do, and you may wonder why we did not do it before. Where's the disconnect happening? Is it the information on recycling? Have you ever asked yourself, how much are we recycling and how much are we not? Without proper regulation, education, and adoption of sustainability will cause our efforts to stall and become less worthy. Company bottom lines will suffer, and we still bring harm to ourselves and the planet we call home. Change happens with transparency, education, and honesty. So, sorry, I think, got it. Sorry, I apologize. Considerations for materials. One of the main attributes we need to consider when starting a sustainable design is our material choice. The material choice accounts for a multitude of important and different reasons, not only for your new design, but sustainability as well. Cost, performance, aesthetics, ability to decorate, sustainability of the material are just some of the key points need to be considered. Material choice is an important step in a design and in sustainable design. Due to this, I've listed over the next several slides important information to be considered. When making your material choice, how do you determine quickly if your material choice will be put on the path to a sustainable design? First, is the material recycled currently in the region your product will be disposed? Do not assume that because your material choice is glass, it is automatically recycled in every region. Or if you choose polypropylene that's filled, it's recycled just because it's PP. What are the other materials you plan to use, and does this affect the recyclability? Do you plan to use any additives, and does this affect it? Decoration expectations planned, and how does this affect the design and the recyclability of your chosen material? Make your own list based on your company's sustainability goals, product portfolio, and what your clients are asking from you. If we look at the four main groups of materials available, glass, plastic, biopolymers, and paper, what is the resource we need to protect and replenish in order to promote sustainability? With glass, main component is silica. With paper, cellulose fiber. Bioplastics are derived from plants, plant extracts, petroleum, and natural gas. Plastic, petroleum, and natural gas. Things to be considered when looking at glass. Glass in general must travel a long distance from the factory of origin to the buyer, thus the weight and distance can affect reducing your carbon emissions. Glass requires an enormous amount of energy to convert. Since glass is fragile, how much extra packaging do you need to transport it in its different stages? Lastly, the risk of dropping or breaking the glass when used by your customer also needs to be considered from a safety standpoint in your design. Paper. Ensure the paper you are using is sustainably sourced. Consider the end use of the product and features required. Not all features can be done in paper. Consider the expected life of a paper product versus another form. Paper does not have the greatest wear characteristics, so common wear situations can be a problem. Decoration of the paper can be done with non-petroleum-based inks, such as soy. And paper has a wide variety of deco techniques that can be used that are sustainable. Bioresins. Consider where your product may be sold, and do the local governments provide readily available solutions for depositing bio-based resins for recycle or industrial composting. Look at what stock material options are available, as well as the number of actual pounds of material available. Many bioresin manufacturers don't have a large or broad portfolio of materials with ranging properties. Make sure you understand what kind of bio-based polymer you are buying. There are numerous grades which are combined with petroleum-based materials, organic cellulose fibers, and does this actually affect your recyclability? Then ask yourself, is it biodegradable, bio-based, or compostable? Considerations for plastic. Does your material choice fall within one of the first 6 codes, being PET, HDPE, PVC, LDPE, and PP, plus polystyrene? Many fall under number 7, which to the recycling industry equates to landfill, not the path of recycling the material. In the next slide, I've listed things to be considered when looking at plastic PCR for your design due to the large interest plastic PCR has recently generated. When looking for a supplier, you need to be diligent. Ask, what is their stream of recycle mainly derived from? Is it toys, batteries, food containers? Inspect the actual facility and see what and how they sort, wash, and extrude the material. How do they sort it? Do they float, NIR, IR, or a combination? How many times do they wash the material prior to recycling? How do they handle the contaminated water from the washing? Do they pre-blend and post-blend? Do they test every lot in-house? Do they run a vented extruder to pull off volatiles? Do they run the materials through a screen pack to remove as many contaminants, such as carbon or aluminum? Do they use a third-party lab for verification for certain tests, such as food contact? Defining innovation. Why is innovation and defining innovation crucial to sustainable design? It is imperative due to the fact that if our current design premise in general does not include innovation as a core attribute in your culture of design, sustainable design will be lacking in key attributes that bring about change, and you will run into problems that may not be necessarily solved with solutions you used in the past. Sustainability in general is an afterthought in a lot of cases, and some of your standardized ideas of design will be flipped upside down. I believe incorporating innovation into your culture by defining it will create a team that does not only look in the box, but looks outside it as well. I believe a company-based definition of innovation that is utilized and encouraged will bring about change and be contagious. So how do I define innovation for our company? Here's our definition of innovation. To be called an innovation, an idea must be replicable at an economical cost and must satisfy a specific need. You will notice I didn't say innovation is coming up with the greatest widget ever conceived or inventing a new material that defines how all materials should be sustainable. By defining innovation, it will affect your relationship and your team's relationship with the word creativity. Here's the definition of creativity by Creativity at Work. Creativity is the act of turning new and imaginative ideas into reality. Creativity is characterized by the ability to perceive the world in new ways, to find hidden patterns, to make connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena, and to generate solutions. So many, and I know this, especially engineers, feel creativity is only granted to those that can paint or create music. Creating music or painting is only one way creativity can be expressed. This is not the only way it can be expressed in design. An example of simple creativity incorporated into design could be a new gate design that is more conducive to the use of PCR with multiple heat histories. That is creativity on a real perspective that will push forward greater awareness of sustainability through your design. Seeking these changes and anticipating these needs for sustainable design are creative. Combining these small creative wins into one package creates buzz, real interest in what was designed, and are the beginnings to a culture of sustainable design. Through these wins, sustainable designs become the norm, not a random occurrence. Design intent. I want to address design intent, and I'm not alluding to design intent defined by many 3D CAD modeling programs and how it relates to the software itself. I'm speaking more to the actual act of considering the environmental impact, feasibility, the financial gain, social impact, or consumer perception, and being consumer intuitive. Mind mapping is an excellent tool that can be used to list, identify, map, and correlate all the different issues that need to be incorporated into the new design. This act will enable you to identify issues, discover possible solutions, and help lay a roadmap for sustainable design that really means something to the industry. To aid in the mapping, I've listed several key points that can be utilized to develop your statement of design intent, as well as start the grouping process. First, sustainability goals, aesthetic goals, material usage goals, brand perception, consumer intuitiveness, purity goals, economic goals, regulation, or political goals. Use these to start branching off and generating ideas. Also free for personal use is the mind mapping tool by MindMeister that can be utilized. There's a link at the bottom of the page. Here's an example of just a very small cut and pasted portion of a sustainable refillable airless mind map that we did. And we designed to give you an idea of how the creation of ideas are concentrated, explored, and to create a sustainable design. As you can see, we use many of the key points I listed in the previous slide. Sustainability goals led us to PCR PP, which then led us to attaining a certified PCR source, and so on. Aesthetic goals. First thing was led us to a simple, clean look, which led us to ergonomic actuation. Material usage, percentage of PCR, or can we be monomaterial? Brand perception and goals. This was very important to us and had the most branches that led off our starting point. What we realized was not all brands had figured out how they would market a refillable. How do we deal with this conundrum with design? This made us ask, how do we make it look like a regular airless, but still act as a refillable when the brand was ready? Consumer intuitiveness. This was another subject that led to an outpouring of ideas. Eventually, we ended up utilizing a button for release. Economic goals led us quickly to cost neutral, which led us back to our material choice. Regulation or political goals. We thought about how a refillable would be marketed, shipped, and sold, which led us to ISTA requirements for shipping. So we incorporated 2 forms of sealing. Purity goals. This was one of the first things that started off that led us straight to airless. Now, while I was just stating some of the thought process for each point pictured, did you guess or think of what your next step might be if you were helping map this idea? If so, you already get how this can be an awesome tool for creativity, innovation, and design with a goal of sustainability behind it. Breaking the design down by these goals will lead to discovery and a path that results in a clear picture. Becoming educated in sustainability, utilizing design intent, defining innovation, which will cause you to reevaluate your relationship with creativity and will inspire designing for sustainability. So that's the end of my quick little 20 minutes, and I thank you. I believe we've got a few minutes for questions if there are any. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Robert. I'm the moderator. I have a question. You talked about the various types of...
Doesn't look like it. I'll give them a second if they want to type something in.
Okay. So you talked about the various types of materials. The question for you is, can you give examples where sustainable materials can create innovation in packaging, where you can use different types of materials which are sustainable? If you could just give your opinion on that.
Well, I guess I was very thorough. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate it, and I hope the rest of the show is good for you.